Good evening, everybody. So, today I just want to talk to you guys about giving, the gift of giving, especially as we approach this year's season of giving. There are a few things I've noticed or experienced that are common mistakes people make when it comes to giving. So, this could be either giving or helping. Not letting the person or people that they are giving or helping know what their expectations are when they're doing so. Whether it is that they expect something in return or they expect a certain behavior. It's very important to establish that right from the get-go before you actually help somebody. That these are my expectations, so that you're not disappointed afterwards. And especially so that you don't end up resenting them if they don't end up doing or giving you back in the manner that you had expected to receive. So I just have about 10 or so guidelines of do's and don'ts for giving. The first one being, give out of love. So when you give out of love and not obligation, you're gonna avoid a lot of pain. Because anything you do out of obligation is more like work or a chore. And usually when we do work or a chore, our mind tells us that there has to be a reward at the end of it. And that's what creates a problem, because you create this premise in your mind that you have to help this person. And with that comes the maybe conscious or as well unconscious expectation of getting something in return, which leads into my next point. So don't give out of ego. And I know a lot of people don't really think about this when they're giving to somebody, and sometimes they're doing that because they need to compensate for certain characteristic flaws within their life. So they think, if I do this for this person, that means that I'm good, you know. It's a way of self-validation. So it's a very selfish way of giving versus, let's say you give because you do see that that person has a need, but you also want to establish a relationship with that person because you value that person for being a person who just happens to be, you know, having a bad time, right? Or have fallen on hard times, but it's someone that you genuinely want to establish a relationship with, or maybe you are related to that person, so it makes sense to help that person. But once you start approaching people from a very egotistic point of view, it can spiral really easily into a state where it's like, you know what, I've made it, and you guys are, you know, the ones that need help. Or now you view them as, you know, this leech that's come to take from you, because it's not a genuine sense of giving, right? It's something that you're doing in order to fulfill yourself. And then when you're not fulfilled, you get disappointed, and then you resent the person, and then you start looking for flaws within them and reasons within them to blame them for why you're not fulfilled, for giving them, or for sharing whatever it is you shared with them. You always want to give from a good place. If you're not in a good place yourself, doesn't matter how much money you have, if you're not in a good place within yourself, it's better you don't. Leave people be, they will find their own way. Okay, this is how we're gonna talk then. All right, so number 3. Remember that when you choose to give, the person you're giving to is not beneath you. They're just on their own journey towards their best life. And sometimes people run into hard times along those journeys. And it's very important to reflect on why you're doing it, because there's 2 very dangerous things here that could go on, or things that could really backfire. When you give or help someone from the perspective of, you know, having a savior mentality, for instance, that, oh, I'm gonna save them, you inadvertently start having an attitude towards that person as the person that needs you. It strips the relationship out of the giving or that interaction, right? Are we giving to make ourselves feel better about our own position? So those are just key things to remember. Moving on to number 4 is to respect and value others for the human beings that they are. You know what I mean? I'm a quiet person, so when I decide to do something for somebody, I'm deciding it because I see that, that's a person that I value. That's a relationship I value for the person that they are. I don't value people based on how much they make or what position they're in or how good things are going in their life. I place value in people based on, first, the relationship that I have with that person and the sheer fact that they're just a person. If you're in a place where you have a lack-based or scarcity-based mentality, you're not in a position to help people. Once you try to help somebody, you're gonna end up in a situation where you're gonna automatically start seeing that person as someone that's just there to take. They're gonna become a threat to what you have. So sometimes it's good to self-reflect before you choose to help somebody and actually see what state you yourself are in. Because there's different types of poverty. Poverty is a state of mind. This leads into the other point that I made, that never give to validate your own pockets or your own financial position. And this often happens once someone starts to give to somebody they think is less than them or beneath them or as not as accomplished as them. A lot of people give in order to show to the world that, look how well I'm doing. I'm doing so well that I can give to this person. Problem with that, though, is that it's going to create tension because body language accounts for about 90% of communication, and people will always sense when you're giving them or helping them from an ego-based place or from a place of not being genuine or from trying to make yourself elevate yourself using their misfortunes, pretty much. So point number 6 is always self-reflect on what state of mind you are in before you give to somebody. Because oftentimes, again, like I said, people are in a state of mind where either they're trying to prove something to the world or prove something to somebody regarding either their well-being, their finances, their position, or even to validate their own self-worth. Thing is, people will sense this, and nobody will appreciate your help when it's accompanied with that sort of attitude, because those sort of attitudes are innately demeaning towards the other human being and their own self-value and self-worth. Because just because someone's in a place of need, it does not mean that they're of less of value. So we really need to keep that in mind when you decide to give. Take a moment before you do anything to really self-reflect and figure out why you're doing it. And then also point number 7, giving with no expectations is the best way to give, because it assures you will never be disappointed. Because like I said before, when you give and you expect something in return that person may or may not even know that you expect, they might be in a position to give back, they might not be in a position to give back when you expect it, and that leads to disappointment, heartbreak, pain, and so forth. So just be really mindful about if you have any expectations around your giving, because most people would rather not be given than to be held hostage to your expectations or be later resented for not meeting those expectations. There are many ways to, I'm not going to say skin a cat because I own a cat and I love my cat and I love all cats and all animals. So I'm going to say there are many ways to, I don't know, cuddle a cat. And there is no one way. So don't ever feel as though you are the only one who can help that person or that person is completely dependent on you, because that again is ego-based and thinking that you are the savior of that person, which leads into the full savior mentality. Number 8 is, if you're not going to speak to somebody going through a rough time because of fear they might ask you for help or you might be afraid they might become a financial burden or something to you, then don't speak to them once you see that they're in a better position. Unless, of course, it's to say that you're sorry for having not spoken to them in the first place. Thing is, if you're not in a position to help somebody, don't cut ties, especially if it's like a family member or a friend. So yeah, simply let people know that, listen, I'm not in a position here to help. Whether it be because you don't have the money at the moment or you don't have the means to help them. And even if you do have the means to help them, but you've self-reflected and you've realized that you're not in the state of mind to help for the right reasons. Number 9 is teach your children to appreciate every gift and expect none. Sounds tough, but it's the best way to ensure that they do not become self-entitled. Nobody's obligated to give your children gifts, whether it be birthday gifts or Christmas gifts or whatever the case is. Just like you are not obligated to give anybody else's children gifts. And especially if these children are known to be disrespectful to people at times or misbehaving, some people might feel that, you know what, they don't want to reward that bad behavior. And they have a right to do that. It's not anything vengeful or deviant on their part. They're trying to help your child realize the value of being respectful to others and the value of appreciating gifts when people give you gifts. So, as the African proverb goes, it takes a village to raise a child. And number 10 is appreciate people for who they are and not who you want them to be. I've run into this numerous times where some people will either try to impose their own, or rather actually project their own inadequacies or values onto other people. Okay, this often happens with family members, where somebody feels that because you're my family member, this is who you should be, rather than acknowledging them for who they truly are. So when I say appreciate people for who they are and not who you want them to be, I don't mean that like if someone has a certain negative behavior towards you that you cannot tell them to just accept that. Obviously there's room for everybody to grow and self-reflect and expand. What I mean is when you have, let's say, certain expectations of what you consider to be, for example, what success is to you. Or let's say you have an idea of what you think love is. Like, there are many other people who might agree with you on your perspective of that, but keep in mind that there are different perspectives and there are different lifestyles and different experiences of all of those facets of life. Ultimately, the key thing here to remember is to just respect. Respect is the greatest gift you can give another person. So yeah, that concludes my little discussion here. That's all I wanted to share with you guys. So if you like this video, press the like button, please share it, subscribe for future videos. Leave a comment if you'd like for me to discuss other topics of interest to you. And have a peachy day. Bye. Ciao. Ciao. Ciao, bellas. Have a peachy day.